I'm Mark Sefter.
And I'm Linda Zayas Palmer.
And this is Arcane Mark.
Welcome back to Arcane Mark Biased Reactions on Bestiary 3.
Part 5.
We've been breaking this up into multiple episodes because there is a lot to be biased about in this book.
There is. There's just a lot in general. We're already on page 162, which would mean that for a lot of the other books we've been doing, we'd be finished the book already, like multiple pages ago. But for this book, it means we're about halfway through the pages. So, shall we be biased together?
Yes, let's.
All right, excellent.
So, what are we starting off with today?
Well, living we're starting symbols.
Off where we left off with living symbol right after Leshy.
That's right. So sometimes the symbols of magic can sort of get reinforced and held together by glyphs or runes or something else and kind of create a construct, which usually is not necessarily done on purpose. It could have happened by accident that it came to life. And that's what makes them so rare. So they're pretty difficult to destroy, although supposedly if you trap them on like sort of a levitating canvas, you could just like leave them there because they aren't exactly three-dimensional. They in a way that like the art of the living graffiti here is like almost implying that they can completely come off, but it does show that a lot of them is stuck onto the surface here, right? Mm-hmm. But they can attack you off of it, so a little piece like that has to be able to at least do something to you when you're not on the surface. But they are stuck in the surface. And if the surface is destroyed, the living graffiti takes damage and is shunted to a nearby surface. And if there's no surface to be shunted in, then the graffiti is destroyed as well. And that's sort of a thing about these, is they're actually two-dimensional creatures that live in a three-dimensional world.
If you critically miss an attack against them, you might damage the surface or your weapon or something else, but don't hit them.
Yep. That's what happens, because you're attacking a 2D object, basically. And there's two types of things here. We've got the living graffiti, which starts with the oil living graffiti that can splatter oil on you, which, you know, it has fun doing that. It can try to dazzle you.
And there's some variants that are made of blood or chalk or ink.
That's right. The chalk living graffiti can do a cone of chalk, and the ink living graffiti has an inky substance, so it has more hit points, and its splatter attack deals a much higher amount of damage. In addition to its splatter, it does as much as its melee attack, but it has a weakness to water because it can get diluted. And then the blood living graffiti can try to absorb blood. When you take damage, it'll get some temporary hit points, which can be a real pain to destroying it. And then the living runes have arcane living rune here, which has got the Thessalonian symbol for wrath, and so therefore is a good arcane one with a bunch of arcane spells. There's also divine, occult, and primal living runes, and there's subbed out spells that you can put in there. It's basically, the idea is that living runes are just like the graffiti, except for it's a rune that came to life and is like, now I'm alive. And by alive, I mean a construct, not all the way alive.
Seeing the camouflage sidebar here that they like surprise attacks, and they're also fond of setting up glyphs of warding as decoys or dummies.
Yeah.
Oh, there it is. Let's look at it. Oh no.
Oh no, it's not. It looks like it made a glyph of warding that was in the same shape as itself. Oh, that jerk. Yes, they may be constructs that are not alive, but living runes are geniuses. They are smarter than you. Mm-hmm. They can't speak, but they can sculpt their form into complex scripts and pictographs that can be understood. So they can communicate with you. And they basically... they're very interesting. They're kind of enigmatic. Like, it doesn't say in their description that they're just completely genocidal or anything, but, like, it also doesn't completely describe their motivation. So you can imagine using... It's lawful neutrals.
Mm-hmm.
So you can imagine using this creature in a lot of different ways. Like, not just, like, oh, there's a rune that's gonna kill you for no reason.
Yeah.
Let's see what's next.
Lokatha.
It's Lokatha. Oh, Lava Being was asking if the living runes and living graffiti have a Pathfinder First Edition equivalent. I think there may have been some things that were similar, but maybe not, like, literally exactly that.
I get that feeling too, but I can't remember.
Okay.
Off the top of my head.
So let's look at Lokatha, though, or as they're sometimes called, fish folk. So Lokatha, these are definitely really cool Lokatha that have, like, sort of some of those
like
lionfish type
features,
features on it. But you can have a variety of different kinds of Lokatha. This one's a hunter, so it's got some hunting abilities that are probably from being a hunter and not a Lokatha, like cooperative hunt and fan bolt and hunt prey. And all these, and smooth swimmer seems like a kind of a hunter type of thing that is just applied to water because it's a Lokatha.
Mm-hmm.
Just in the same way that rangers get the ability to ignore difficult terrain. I mean, that might be a Lokatha thing. Who knows? But they've got low light vision. They're amphibious, and so they can go on land or under the water. They are.
They like to ride giant moray eels.
Yeah, they ride eels. They're neutral, so you can talk to them and trade services as guides in exchange for metal and ceramic items because it's hard to build those underwater. And tubers, they love tubers. It's their favorite snack.
So if you find yourself in Jidao looking for something to trade, you might be able to.
The underwater nation of Jidao in Tansha is a major Lokatha stronghold. Also, they generally help damaged shelling ships and sailors in exchange for really not asking for much. They provide food and guidance, so they're pretty friendly. Like, they're neutral, but they're not like, we're neutral and we're going to eat you.
Mm-hmm.
And they are very tight knit. And their matriarchs are assisted by primal spellcasters and healers who are often accompanied by octopus companions. So that's Lokatha. They're much friendlier than the facing page.
Yes. The Lovelorn, the heart spider thing.
Yes, the heart spider thing. Linda definitely encountered one of these.
In War for the Crown, yeah.
Yes, in the second edition converted game. They are really nasty. They are created after the tragic death of from toxic love. So it could be star-crossed lovers who take their life and whose misadventures and piteous aura throws do not bury their parents' strife because they create a horrible gloom aura and attack. It could also be created just from someone who had an obsession with the other person that was rejected. It's
and
all
then
sorts of
and
things.
then they became malicious.
Yep, and committed suicide or whatever. They're pretty horrible. They will stalk and torment people that they knew in life as this horrible heart spider. They have this aura called the gloom that instills unease and makes the air dark and cold. Makes it harder to resist emotion effects inside of their gloom, and they can suffuse the area with magic after they've been there for a week, even outside of their aura, lasting until they leave or are destroyed. When you attack them, or when you and your movement next to them, they're going to try to skitter away, which is a huge pain for melee characters.
And their fangs have a curse that makes people
Cynic's curse.
Yes, morose and listless, so that they can't benefit from helpful emotion effects.
Yes, and it can be permanent too.
Yes,
they just do morose and listless, and they can't. And they cannot benefit from helpful emotion effects. But they can benefit from harmful emotion effects. And by benefit, I mean not benefit at all. Yes. Be harmed by. Plus, they've got fear and illusory creatures and illusory objects, invisibility. So they can be pretty obnoxious. They can also grab you even though they're tiny, which is pretty funny, I guess. They do persistent bleed with their fangs too. And they like to hold on to mementos and trinkets from their lives and their undeath. Because, of course, they take trophies. They're lovelorn. Isn't that lovely? It's a heart.
No.
Mike Kimmel says you might even say they wear their heart on their sleeves.
All 8 of them. That's good.
All right, let's see what's on.
Hi, Mike.
What's here next.
Moff-Tuts.
Oh, we mentioned earlier that Moff-Tuts and Girtabalus are very similar in that they like to protect like ancient ruins. And it says here, occasionally Moff-Tuts and Girtabalus share a home. Since both groups respect locales and their history, it can create a partnership where the Moff-Tuts are watched from the sky and the Girtabalus, which are the scorpion people from Sumerian mythology and the Epic of Gilgamesh, will patrol the ground. So Moff-Tuts, as you can see here, they've got the hawk wings, they've got sort of the lion-like lower bodies.
And they have runic tattoos, which provide them with protection.
Yes, the runic tattoos are very, very important to them. They are part of their cultural tradition of Moff-Tuts. They venerate ancestors and deities, and they can trace their lineage back multiple generations. They tend to be matriarchal and isolationist, but they aren't necessarily hostile. It depends on if you respect the ruins that they're in, or if you are a tomb robber who is going to screw it up. They never give their tattoos to anyone except for another Moff-Tat. That's what they do.
Mm-hmm. So those tattoos both give them a runic resistance reaction that helps protect them against the whatever damage type attacks that are being used against them.
It's 5 resistance, but it's not just against the triggering attack. It just sticks around for a minute unless they switch it again.
And it also allows any non-magical scimitars that they wield to become +1 striking scimitars as long as they hold them, which is pretty handy. Convenient. Yeah.
I mean, I like +1 striking scimitars. They are forceful magical sweep. Plus, they've got a sanctuary that's like a little bit of a small sanctuary effect, but it can certainly help against basic tomb robbers who come into their tomb.
Mm-hmm.
And they've got True Strike when they really want to hit you with their scimitar. Plus, the Paired Strike ability where they go ahead and make 2 strikes against the same target, one with each scimitar, and add them together. And since the scimitars are forceful, that means that they're going to do more damage on the second attack too. Plus their Raptor Dive, where they spend their whole turn flying a ridiculous amount and then doing a paired scimitar double attack at the end of the movement and knock you prone if they hit with both of them.
Thanks for gifting a sub, Elf.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, now Mike is subbed and he can do Leshy emojis.
Yes, he can.
Alright, so,
the next creature we have here are
what do we got next?
Meslons.
Oh, Meslons from ancient Aslant. The Meslon is an ooze that is immortal. It's actually a pretty smart ooze because it's basically just some person who, using a long-forgotten ritual that one scholar was actually able to reproduce in modern Taldor and then was killed after using it once, creates a magical rare ooze that is still keeps all of the intelligence, wisdom, and charisma of the original person who became the ooze.
They can absorb spells.
Yep.
And then cast them back.
Yep. They nullify the effect of the spell and store it for later. They cast it themselves. They can discorporate at 0 hit points, which, by the way, does not kill them. They just eventually reform. It may take years or even decades to do so, but they will.
They can also assume the form of any medium or small creature, pretty much. There's a few exceptions, but it also includes anybody specific people that they've seen, so they can look like anyone they want to.
Yep. I mean, they are an ooze, so yeah. They're basically a liquid shapeshifter type creature. They can extend their limb to the stars above with a 20-foot reach using their extend limb. They can trap you by throwing ooze globules at you. that cause you to go at a very slow speed, and on a critical hit, just be completely immobilized and fall to the ground if you were flying. Ouch. You can end all the effects by escaping with a very high DC, but if you do spend 3 interact actions, you can get out without having to try to attempt the escape. So, anybody can escape, but they'll take their whole turn doing that, and meanwhile, the Meslon is going to do some other things. They've got a heavy regeneration that is deactivated by only acid, and they can speak and understand any language they hear spoken after listening for 1 minute. They can figure it out, but only for the next 24 hours.
That's pretty convenient, given how ancient they are.
Yes, because the only languages they know other than that are Aklo and Aslanti.
Yes.
Which most people probably can't speak with them.
Yes.
But they do keep many secrets because of the fact that they have a lot of long forgotten knowledge, but after millennia of isolation, they're a little bit eccentric, as you might expect.
So it might not be so straightforward to ask them about their knowledge.
Yeah. Let's go, Migo.
Whose knowledge do you definitely not want to be asking about?
I mean, if you even wanted to ask them about something, you'd have to speak their language, which consists of pulses and flashes in a wide range of colors, some of which are outside the visible spectrum for humans, which are generated on their head. You can learn it, but you can't speak it without the use of illusion magic that's capable of generating colors outside of the visual spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
Even then, most creatures can convey only basic notions and concepts in Migo with the illusion magic because it's not sophisticated enough to pulsate in the correct Migo way. So yeah, they are uncommon fungus. They are fungus scientists and colonists that love to vivisect you. It's one of their favorites.
Yes, they fly through space and find planets that they want to mine for resources. And among the resources that they like are the brains of the greatest minds of those planets.
They like those. They also feel like the outer gods and great old ones are like less like gods to them and more like, yeah, these things are pretty cool, I guess. They're like my musing to Azathoth and Yog-Sothoth and all the Oths and Nimbaloth. But also the non-Oths as well.
But as you could expect,
because we're not
anything,
Grioths.
Yes, is that
the Grioths are actually very religious, whereas the Migo are like, these are just cool. They're my muse. They inspire me to vivisect you and do horrible things in outer space. They do disguise themselves as a medium humanoid creature, and they have learned to speak whatever the local language is where they do their experiments, which means they're listed with common here because that's what the intro to all the Bestiary says. Hey, if it says common, that just means whatever the local language is.
Yes.
Because they don't only speak their special Migo language. They've got precise tremor sense, which is a huge pain. If you're moving along an area where they share that surface, that means they basically see you through that. Unless you take precautions for hiding, you're just going to be directly observed by the Migo. They don't even have a flat check to miss you. They don't have to breathe so they can go through space. They are weak to slashing damage, though. So, ironically, they like to vivisect you, but you can maybe cut them up with slashing attacks because they're made of fungus. Their evisceration ability basically is that once they've grabbed you, they make a medicine check against your fortitude, and depending on what happens, you take slashing damage and horrific slow from the pain and possibly a 24-hour debuff.
And naturally, they have sneak attack too, because...
Oh, yes. They've got sneak attack. Why not? They're grabbing you. They might as well do sneak attack also. I mean, they like it. Don't you?
Sure.
So let's move on to the Millendemalion.
Are these guys new?
They are. I believe they're written by Jason Keeley. They're one of the few monsters that have Linda in their name. The Millendemalion. So, basically, the idea with these is they are sort of like from Alice in Wonderland, the Mad Hatter style type situation. So but the way the story works is everyone may have heard the story of like, you know, the shoemaker and his wife, and they like didn't have enough time to make the shoes, or they were running on hard times, but then during the night these like little elves would come in and like make shoes for them or other clothing pieces depending on the story, and they would leave out food for them, and like eventually like it would become their child or something like that, but also potentially like just help them out over the period of a lot of time. Melinda Million is like the bad version of this story, where basically a fae is coming out and they're like, I'm gonna help people, I'm just gonna help a humble artisan, and then the artisan gets really reliant on their help and just like, yeah, it takes them for granted, and they become twisted and evil. And the hat version of that is a Melinda Million. So they're neutral evil, they're cruel pranksters, and they delight in punishing mortals who dare task a fae with such mundane work. So basically, the Melinda Million have a really weird set of things that they do. So they can attack you with felt shears, which they can throw, but they probably shouldn't, and they can hit you in melee for like a fair amount of damage, some of which is mental, and a huge amount of extra sneak attack damage. However, their main situation is, oh no, they do have one other thing. Their mind is unsettling, and so if they succeed against a mental effect, and you did the mental effect, you take some mental damage. But their main thing is they have an attack of opportunity where they can actually use their ranged attack hat toss with the attack of opportunity instead of making a strike, but they do it in melee. And their hat toss is their big event. So it's one action. They craft a mind-altering hat in combat and toss it onto a target with a flick of their wrist, choosing a befuddling bowler, a bewitching beret, a dazzling deerstalker, a fettering fedora, or a tiring tricord. They make a ranged attack roll against you, and if they hit, and you must succeed at a will save or experience an effect from the hat. If they critically succeed at the strike, you take a -4 penalty on the save. You can only wear one Melinda Million hat at a time. And the befuddling bowler causes you to be stupefied too, whereas the bewitching beret causes you to be fascinated. The dazzling deerstalker causes you to be dazzled. The fettering fedora causes you to have a speed penalty, and the tiring tricorn causes you to become sleepy and become slowed 1.
So if you're fighting one of these guys, you're probably going to get debuffed by their hats.
Yes, absolutely. Gonna
and
get
then
debuffed
stabbed
by their
by
hats.
felt shears.
It's very likely. Now, you do have... So, the bad news is it's only one action, and they can do it as their reaction on the hat. The good news is they do have to hit you, and you have to fail a save, so you have a lot of chances to not get debuffed by the hats. And the debuffs are really bad, but they're not, like, incapacitatingly bad.
Yes.
Of course, the really bad news is that means that the effect is not incapacitation, which
Yes.
means if you have to fight 4 of them when you're higher level, they're just going to be throwing all these hats on you.
That is
But
true.
I guess, you know, the good thing is once you've got that tiring tricorn on your hat, you cannot be hit by the other hat. So there's a limit to how many hats you can wear at the
Hat
same time.
says, "Aw."
There we go. So it says here, people have figured it out. Linda makes shoes. Linda makes addictive shoes.
Wait,
shoes
what?
to aglets to Cockney hag children. There you go.
I am very
That's people's
confused
logic that they've
I
determined
am very
from the thing.
confused by chat right
You get a hat, and you get a hat.
now.
There you go.
3 hats for the hat trick.
That's right.
All right, what about the Mobogos?
Mabogo, well, they're the children of the demon lord Gogunta, who we talked about in our Shattered Star episode.
Yes, boggards often revere them.
That's right. And so, Bogos are gigantic, giant frog-like things. We just have a lot of giant frogs in Pathfinder, I guess. But they have an absolutely absurd amount of regeneration. It's just It's a lot. But it can be deactivated by also a lot of things. So, you do not want them to get to regenerate 30 hit points every turn. It's a huge percentage of their maximum health. They're back up to full within about 5 rounds unless you really, really had them low. But you can deactivate it with acid, cold, or fire. They are not very smart, but you know they're about as smart as all those characters in Pathfinder Society First Edition who dumped their intelligence to 7. And they can speak Boggard and animals. They've got a bunch of spells that are mostly for utility, honestly, like control water and create water. They can still entangle you and make an obscuring mist.
They have a Song of the Swamp that they could do, which gives a huge bonus to Boggards and Mabogos while slowing everything else.
It might be like
perhaps.
It can swallow you whole if it after it grabs you, which it can do with its tongue. Go like and grab you with its tongue, which will keep you on a leash with the tongue, essentially. Swamp Stride to move full speed through the swamp.
And it can also use its tongue to reposition creatures that it has grabbed.
Into a position that you don't want to be in.
Which maybe it's Jaws.
It could be.
That's probably a position you don't want to be in.
Yeah, but it can also just, since it has 30-foot reach with its tongue, it could get you from 30 feet on one side, then pull you 30 feet to the opposite side, making you be 60 feet away from your allies.
Hold on, Mark. I need to tell you about one of the comments here. Frogs are the bog standard creature in Pathfinder.
They sure are. This is the battle cry of a very angry frog. And it's like...
Yeah, that video is great on YouTube.
All right,
if you haven't seen
it. There's also the Makole Mbembe, which I believe is also a pickup from an adventure path.
Yes.
So they are large reptilian predators found deep within Galarian's jungles. The Mwangi view Makole Mbembe as embodiments of nature's strength and majesty. So they're uncommon, huge animals that can attack you with their jaws, their tail, or their foot.
And their tail, they have a whip tail that can move so fast that it creates a sonic boom that stuns creatures.
Stun you and attack with the tail. They trample you with the foot. Otherwise, they might use their jaws because the jaws do the most damage. So depending on which of those 3 effects they want, that's basically what you're dealing with when you deal with Makole Mbembe. Is they either gonna stun you and hit you with their tail, they're gonna trample you with their feet, or they're going to do their big heavy damage jaw attack. They love tropical jungles in lakes, rivers, and other bodies of water where they hide themselves from civilization, even though they are huge.
Yes.
Alright.
How about monkeys?
Alright, monkeys. Well, monkeys are basically monkeys, right? So you've got the tiny monkey that is just gonna attack for 1d6 piercing, and it's got grab and go where it strides or climbs and tries to steal things. The monkey swarm, which can make a cacophony of awful rackets and ransack and rummage through people's possessions while doing a swarming bite. And there's a sidebar about thieving monkeys, where monkeys have been observed stealing objects from humans and holding them as ransom for bits of food. But yes, it's monkeys. What's like, people like monkeys. Now you have them. We didn't have them before.
What about moose?
A moose bit my sister.
Yes. Apparently you're going to reference all the memes today.
Yeah. Hey, that's not a meme. That's just from Monty Python.
Yes.
So, moose tracks. Moose thrive in cooler climates and many adaptations to survive to the cold, including thick skin and dense heat-retaining fur. They make their own trails in the snow to find the best food.
Stunt Monkey says that monkeys are awesome. He said, entirely unbiasedly.
Of course, unbiasedly.
And Elf is sweating in Canadian from seeing the...
from seeing the moose.
Yes, Well, they do have they can trample you. They have a thundering charge.
They can
and
kick backwards at you.
Yes, with
It's
their hind legs.
it's at a penalty, but it deals extra damage, which can be obnoxious for you because it's quite damaging, but it's also pretty inaccurate. Their cold adaptation helps them survive cold environments, and they're pretty intimidating when they're and they've got high athletics, so it's moose. And there's lots of moose information in case you wanted to know more about moose diet or situations with ogres and trolls when they come into contact with a moose, or yeah, they're a creature 3. Like, they're seriously more powerful. They're like on par with an ogre somewhat. The trolls are stronger, but still a moose is
I
a
find it
dangerous
interesting
creature.
reading some of these longer animal entries because it'll have like correct and accurate information about those animals that is true about them on Earth as well, and then it'll be like, well, how do they interact with these fantasy creatures as well?
That's right.
How about speaking of fantasy creatures, Mordics?
Well, so Mordics are a extremely rare new type of creature that exists because of the fact that the Whispering Tyrant's radiant fire cause magical explosions by colliding negative and positive energy, and the sort of like how you can combine an electron and a positron, and they annihilate each other. But among these corpses rose Mordics, who were living survivors mistaken for corpses because of the fact that when they hold their breath, they suspend their biological processes and become infused more by negative energy and become basically undead while they're holding their breath. They have a variety of abilities, including being vulnerable to consecration effects like sanctified ground. They're super vulnerable to it. And then they are very specific to the type of ancestry they originally were. They get a different undead ability. So, for example, elves, who are normally immune to ghoul or immune to ghoul paralysis, become angivores, which have ghoul-like tendencies, including an insatiable hunger for raw humanoid flesh. They have a carrion scent where they can smell doomed, dying, or wounded creatures that are around them. They can definitely attack you with their jaws that have paralysis. They have death gas, which is that thing I said where they hold their breath in order to for up to 8 rounds in order to become an undead for that time. When they're adjacent to a paralyzed, restrained, or unconscious creature or a dead creature who recently died, just like a ghoul, they feast upon them and gain some temporary hit points. And their paralysis, similar to Ghoul 2, although it can paralyze elves. So that is the Mordic elves. They're still scholarly. They love education, but kind of macabre because they're Mordics. Let's see. So Gurgis
are the human Mordics.
They
They are more likely to be non-evil than other Mordics because they can sate their hunger without feeding upon sapient creatures.
That's right. They can sate their hunger in on sapient creatures because they have a nourishing feast. They spend 1 hour consuming 1 bulk of raw meat
to reverse the putrescence of their bodies.
Yes.
Because their bodies are always rotting.
To just be a pale, bloated human instead of a horrifically rotting one.
Yes.
Hooray. During that time, rotting flesh ceases to function, which is their ability that when you hit them when they're rotting, the Gurgis is covered with rotten flesh and putrid fluids, which causes you to become sickened because of the awful fluids that come out. Most Gurgis are survivors from Roslar's Coffer or Vigil, who fled together to Nirmathas or Ustalov, so you've got a lot of Last Wall folks among the Gurgists. They can fist punch you, they've got a composite short bow. Of course they have, just like everybody that in the Mordics, they've got a death gasp, calculated blow where they'll aim for your weak points to do extra precision damage and possibly make you clumsy, and they can tackle you. So life leechers are Mordic orcs. They're formed when orc tainted by the Gravelands falls in battle, and their ferocity overcomes them.
So they have a Mordic ferocity.
Yes, you might think that, like, well, maybe they would work with the Whispering Tyrant, but they don't like him either. Just like a lot of the orcs who were like, no, we're not going to work for the Whispering Tyrant, and so life leechers often go on the front lines against the undead armies of the Whispering Tyrant, even though they are also chaotic evil. They've got a concentration vulnerability just like everybody and a death gas, but yeah, they've got Mordic ferocity.
Which is ferocity, but also lets them be concealed because of the flickering fragments of the souls they've consumed.
Yeah, because they like eating souls. That's their other reaction.
Yep. Soul
but
feast.
Unfortunately for them, if they use a soul feast to kill someone and eat their soul to get hit points back, they won't be able to use their Mordic ferocity, so they better be careful. They've got their tusk, which can leech out essence, and their claw, which does persistent bleed. And when they leech out essence, they drain your life essence, so they can eat your soul, which is your spiritual essence, or they can drain your life essence and get temporary hit points, which is not fun for you. It could make you drained or stunned if you're undead, because they can drain either positive energy life essence or the negative energy destructive life essence that should not be used for healing, but they are totally using it for healing.
And their weapons are also Ghost Touch, which helps them fight against incorporeal undead.
Their leech essence has an obnoxious rider that it can increase the value of drained and stunned, and it doesn't just say from leech essence, so
yeah.
These things are a horrific pain if something else does like a modest amount of stun, where you're like, oh, well, I'm only stunned 1 because I succeeded on the save, and then they all pile leech essence on you until that stun 1 becomes stun 2, or worse. And yeah, they've got Ghost Touch, that's pretty handy. And I guess they also have composite short bows. Maybe it's actually Soda Angivores. Maybe composite short bow is just like the weapon of choice for Mordics.
Well, the Eddioling Blight Mage doesn't have a short bow.
Yes, but they also, each of them is, I guess, a specific example of them, right? It's an Angivore Flesh Gnawer, it's a Gurgus Mauler, a Life Leecher Brawler, and Eddioling is a Blight Mage. So Eddiolings are the example of gnome Mordics. So when a primal spark of the first world in the gnome's heart is engulfed in the radiant fire, the first world Fey magic fights back, and it creates this Eddioling, which have churning positive and negative energy in battle for dominance. They almost have no colors except for their pulsating green veins and eyes. And they also have consecration vulnerability and death gas like everyone else, except their death gas makes them incorporeal, which is not normal for death gasp, and they can't cast spells while they're incorporeal. These particular blight mages that are pretty focused on spells.
They have a withering aura that can drain nutrients from nearby plant and animal life.
Yep, they've got a corrupting touch that deals a bunch of negative damage with a touch.
They secrete ectoplasm, so if you try to grab them, you'll take negative damage or become enfeebled.
Sure will. It's a lot of fun, but not really. And their reaction, Ectoplasmic Shield, when you try to hit them with a physical ranged attack, they can just interpose ectoplasm between you. So they've not only got life essence going on in both directions, they've got spiritual connection as well to ectoplasm, which is where the material plane borders on the ethereal plane, and spiritual essence, ethereal essence, ectoplasm is sort of what comes in between those two things.
I see it pointing out the specific language. There's other Mordics. There are other Mordics that it said are also common. That means as prevalent as these other rare examples.
Yes, they're also common as these rare, extremely rare creatures.
Yes.
As opposed to being double, mega, ultra rare. Like if you had a rare ancestry already.
Yeah.
And then that became a
Probably,
Mordic.
that would probably honestly be a unique creature where there was only one.
Or there
that
might
was
be
at
like
the time.
3.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, on Galarian there are 3, and there will never be more than these 3.
Mm-hmm.
So they're not exactly unique, but yes, there are 3. You know, or there's one Android Mordic maybe, and there's 3 Strix Mordic that for some reason got hit by it. Or
Exactly, something
you
like
know.
that.
So they are also common among Mordics, which, yeah, we generally try to not use the word common there because of the confusion. We would just say like are also prevalent, but in that case we did not successfully not use it. So let's see. Their reaction gives them a bonus against AC with Ectoplasm, and they can deflect it attacks with the Ectoplasm. What else do we have here with them?
They've got
a lot of spells
because
they're a Blight
Mage.
Mage. Yeah, that's not for being an Eddie only though, and that's the end of the Mordics.
So what about our next page here?
What about our next page, dear?
Mosasaurs.
Mosasaurs are massive swimming reptiles, including the Platycarpus and the Tylosaurus.
With a strafing chomp.
Yes.
Swims by and bites you. It has an aquatic drag that can carry you along with it.
Yeah, it likes to do that. It can swallow you whole. Hold a deep breath. And Tylosaurus is gargantuan.
They've got that same aquatic drag ability, but they also
have
a
much more vicious
do,
version of the strafe. The strafing chomp is just like, I'm gonna swim and I'm gonna bite you for half damage at some point. Whereas vicious strafe is, I'm gonna swim and I'm gonna bite you and I'm gonna tail attack you against somebody else.
Yep.
So just as it's swimming along, it's just constantly attacking with everything against everybody. And it's got improved grab, so that bite is just gonna get you eaten pretty quickly because it can then do a swallow whole. Plus, the Void Mosasaur is a legend on the plane of water that swims the boundless seas of the plane of water. It's gigantic, and it has gouges and scars. Who knows why there's a Void Mosasaur, but there is a Void Mosasaur. Speaking of things that who knows, Mothman.
Rare harbingers of calamity.
Yes. They are agents of fate, provided that the fate is pretty devastating and destructive.
So they have a portentous gaze where they can where they can fill people's mind with visions and senses of destructive future, causing them to become frightened.
That's right. They absolutely can do that. They also have occult spells such as 4th level invisibility, the really annoying one, modify memory, phantasmal killer, nightmare, suggestion. It's just a lot of pain in the butt spells. Illusory creature, mind reading, illusory object, misdirection.
And they can also cast any spell of 5th level or lower that takes 2 or fewer actions to cast.
Which is really annoying because they're level 7, they're not level 9, so they can cast a spell that's sort of above their pay grade.
But as long as it is causing some sort of disaster or otherwise memorable event. So there's some examples here.
They have to be. They can only do it if it steers the flow of fate towards the disaster.
Yes.
They don't cause the disaster themselves.
Yes. So the examples here: casting illusory steam to coax someone in the right direction. Using sending to deliver an important message, or casting resting grass to weaken a structure and cause a calamity.
Yes, it would cause the calamity to eventually happen, but it doesn't. Example that's not in there is like cone of cold to kill everybody with a giant cone.
Yes,
and they can focus their gaze on you, which if it is a particularly problematic if you're already frightened because you'll become stupefied for an entire day, and. Yeah, the Red Bishop is an example who loves Pazuzu in all of his Pazuzu-ish ways and lives near Sandpoint.
There is always much plotting and scheming going on around Sandpoint.
All right, So,
Speaking of rare creatures,
super rare creatures.
Munavri.
Yes, Munavri are like these gray, almost pigmentless people who live in the Darklands and are rare, super rare, and they pretty much don't like any of their neighbors, but are actually good aligned. And they are descendants of humans who kind of survived Earthfall and were abducted by Algolflus and dragged down into the deepest parts of the Darklands in Orv in the Sightless Sea.
And they have psychic powers.
Yep. They've got psychic power. They live on Jade Islands, and they use their psychic powers for the cause of good, waging war against pretty much everything else in the Darklands.
So their psychic powers let them intuit how to effectively use an object.
Yes, they're big on object reading, but they also can throw telekinetic projectiles, mind link with others, do offend and pain, soothe with their psychic powers, and they've got some mental resistance too.
I think the intuit object's pretty cool though, because they can be like greatsword. Oh, now I can use this greatsword. I'm now trained to do some greatsword. I want to use a Jade Cat talisman. I'm now trained in acrobatics.
Yep. That's what they can do. They have to have an object that requires that training, though. So they can't... If they don't have a Jade Cat talisman, then they... also, they don't actually become trained completely in acrobatics. They gain the proficiency, but only for the purpose of using that specific item. So they can use that greatsword, or they can use that Jade Cat.
Oh, that
but
makes
they
sense.
can't do all kinds of acrobatics.
So they couldn't, like, make a collection of items that they use to...
No, because they intuit the object itself.
That makes sense.
Like, I could imagine an ability that lets you keep the objects in order to gain skills, but that's not exactly how the Munavri Spellblade does it. Alright, there's also Mycoloid. Or maybe Myceloid.
Yes.
So the Myceloids...
Not a fungus leshy.
Neutral evil fungus who spread deadly purple pox to control your mind and devour your flesh. Yay. They find battles with humanoids to be very exciting because new fodder gives many delicious possibilities. Their life cycle they consider humanoids to have an ideal life cycle of 4 simple steps. Childhood, wander naive and afraid, unaware of myceloid. Adulthood, discover your true purpose as taste purple pox and become enslaved by myceloid. Then you die, giving rise to a new myceloid. Then you go to an afterlife upon becoming a myceloid meal. Those are the 4 steps. They don't even have to eat humanoid flesh.
They just like it.
They like it a lot. And they don't really want to work together with anyone except myceloids. Pretty much. But if they do, they'll invite you to share a meal to seal the pact because they can dominate you when you get infected by their purple pox. Yay. They also have great table manners. They eat communal meals. And they offer tasting notes, claiming they can taste intangibles like innocence or despair. Creatures that died of purple pox are dessert. And the new myceloid birthed from the corpse gets the first slice.
Yay! You don't want to tangle with them.
Yep. So when reduced to 0 hit points by a critical hit, it pops and emits spores. Even if it already emitted all of the spores it could safely do. Once per day, it can emit spores, which causes purple pox. Purple pox will stupefy you, and then stupefy you more, and make you go to a myceloid colony, and then you die.
Maybe you die, then you burst, and a new fully grown myceloid comes out.
And their spore domination ability makes it so that they dominate someone who has purple pox. They can, even on a success, the target becomes helpful to myceloids and can't take hostile action against them. That's a success against spore domination. So it's really, really obnoxious for their enemies. Pretty much your only hope is the fact that it's incapacitation, so you might get a critical success. Because a failure is that helpful myceloid thing lasts for a minute. Mm-hmm. And the critical failure is it's forever until the purple pox is cured. And it's not like, it is true you're temporarily immune to spore domination for 10 minutes, so if you can survive and escape after a minute of being, oh yeah, I'll let you tie me up, my friend, my Soloids, they just want to do a game.
Yes.
Then you do have 9 minutes after a failure
away.
to try to run away. But if you critically fail, that's the end.
That's it. Yep.
All right.
How about Nagaji?
How about Nagaji and Linda? What do you think about them?
So, the side view here talks about Nagajor.
That's right.
Which
Tropical
is,
wilds of Nagajor.
Which is where many Nagaji come from.
Yep. It's ruled by Naga matriarchs, from despotic fiefdoms to lush utopias, depending on the Naga that rules it. Naga
were created by the Naga goddess Nalinvati.
Yes, Nalinvati created the first Nagaji basically to be a backbone of society, respecting Nagas, because Nagas are like not that populous of a people, so you need like a larger group of people who can help like do things like build cities. Like you don't have enough Nagas that you're gonna build all of the cities. And they modern day Nagajis are kind of willingly serve Nagas because Nagas are kind of more powerful and are closer to their gods. And some people are like, oh, that means you're brainwashed, and Nagaji are like, no, this is just the way things work. This is our thing.
We rely on Nagas, and Nagas rely on us.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's right. And so basically, yeah, Nagaji are very strong. They have low intelligence, so they've got a -1 in here. And the Nagaji soldier example here has attack of opportunity because it's a soldier.
And they can accelerate their metabolism to assist them in shaking off poisons.
Sloth toxins.
Yes.
Plus, they've got some poison resistance on this one. And this one can also has a higher nature check to command an animal that is a reptile. What about Namorador? Namorador.
From the Shadow Plane.
That's right. They live on the Shadow Plane, but they're kind of undead also.
They, looks like, specifically like to eat babies.
Yes, they like it, and they actually have the Shadow trait because of the fact that they are Shadow Planer. They like babies. It's tasty. So they're going to material leap, where they go from the Shadow Plane as a reaction to suddenly onto the material plane when they sense that something on the material plane died. And their life sense can actually sense onto the material plane as well. And they'll come over there because they like to go there. Like, they're not necessarily going to kill you themselves, but they'll definitely try to find corpses to scavenge, and then they might kill you if they want.
They're afraid of fire because they're weak to fire.
They don't like it. They really don't. They have a whistling bones ability where wind whistles through their jutting bones, creating an eerie tone that can frighten you. That's kind of an aura. They've got their jaws that are the more powerful attack. Their claws are agile and can grab you. They can spit at you, which actually deals bludgeoning damage. And then they've got a sprint. When they're not holding anything in their hands, they go on all fours and go super fast, and then make a melee attack at you at the end of their movement. So it's kind of like a sudden charge. That is Namoradors. They have easy access to the material plane, so people tell stories about them showing up and doing horrible things. Horrible things.
They could show up anywhere.
Anywhere they want, using the Shadow Plane.
How about narwhals?
How about them? They are mid-sized whales with a tusk.
A tusk that they can impale you with their impaling charge.
They've got a very long-range echolocation, but only in the water. Aquatic echolocation, 120 feet. That's a very wide, precise sense. They can hold their breath for 30 minutes. They can impale you by kind of... They've got their sudden charge, swim twice and make a tusk strike. If it moves at least 20 feet from the starting position, deals an extra 1d10 damage on the impaling charge, and it grabs you with it because it impaled you on the impaling charge. So that's actually a lot of stuff for a level 3 creature to do. So you don't want to run into them. It is the only ability it has, but it's a good ability, and they resist cold 5 because they like living in cold environments enough, apparently, that they actually resist cold rather than having, like, the moose's just ability to protect to cold environments.
Yes.
They can communicate with clicks and whistles.
And some aquatic and amphibious creatures like to use narwhals as mounts.
Yep.
Because they move pretty fast underwater.
That's right. You can try to train a narwhal and do that. Alright, the Nemeth. Undead guardians that bind themselves to a location. Sometimes, like, purposefully sacrifice themselves as protectors who seek immortality to protect the area. Even if they weren't evil at first, their impossible quest and the violence and evil of the way they were created, which required their connected friends and family to also be sacrificed to create them, caused them to become evil no matter what. They've got these captive spirits and an aura around them that are basically the friends and family or fellow worshippers or sacrificed innocents. Those ones were evil to begin with. The bound spirit's aura deals negative damage to nearby enemies, but they can also sort of send them out to
the rage of the spirits. They can channel the rage of the spirits to smash everything near them with sonic and negative damage.
That's right.
They can throw the spirits to tell them to go up to a mile away and then be able to scout through them.
But they do lose their ability to use Rage of Spirits and Spirit Dart range attack while the spirits are out scouting. But because they have got a Spirit Dart that does a bunch of range damage and drains life. Spirit Tendril melee damage drains life. Their drain life does drain 2, which is pretty nasty.
But they can't go more than 500 feet from the site to which they're bound.
That's really their big vulnerability. They've got 3 Fingers of Death. That's pretty nasty. 3 top-level harms and a wall of force. A pretty strong wall of force. So they're dangerous, but if you move far enough away, they can't go more than 500 feet. Now their spirits can move up to a mile. So that's how they find out.
So they can watch you. Yeah.
That's how they find out what's going on. Nemeth. Alright, what about Night Gaunt?
Night Gaunt.
They like to tickle you. That's one of their favorite. They basically find, like, human emotions that are, like, coming off the human to be, like, a different type of, like, tasty treat.
They like despair.
It doesn't mean that they, like, drain your emotions and you become emotionless. You just have the emotion.
Yeah. They like despair and horror and nervous laughter.
Yes. Like from tickling.
Yes.
And so they consider these to be unique cocktails that they like to mix and match. And so what their big thing that they like to do is they'll grab you, they'll fly off into the air so that you potentially will die if they drop you, and then they start tickling you.
Yes.
Because that combines a lot of the things that Linda just said that they like. And they can overcome you with laughter and cause you not to be able to perform reactions and sicken you with their tickling until you vomit, I guess, from the tickles. They have their tail tickle effect. Their claw can attack you. They've got attack of opportunity with their tail to tickle you, basically tickle of opportunity. They have no face, and they don't need to breathe. They can sense your thoughts. Precisely, in fact. So you better take precautions against thought sense, or they're just going to basically kind of see you with their ability to sense your thoughts. And yeah, they can gather in colonies where they entertain each other because they can share the emotional memories of their meals with each other and be like, hey, this was really fun. What do you think about this?
But they can only feed on a given creature once.
Yes, that's it. That's the last time. So then they might just let them go and deal with it again, because there's not really much point. They don't they cat neutral. They're not necessarily just trying to kill everybody. They're just doing their thing. They serve grudgingly when conjured to other worlds, but because they often just want to escape and maybe feed on their conjurer's emotions. Speaking of night things, Night Marchers. Yes, from Hawaiian folklore. Night Marchers travel on kind of the main smooth roads, because they have like the King's Road that they were traditionally traveling on, and they ring conch shells and beat drums, and they react violently if you are in their way, unless one of your own ancestors is in the troop, in which case they might that ancestor might call out to spare you. Otherwise, you better show proper deference, or they will annihilate you. Basically, so that's kind of how the stories go in the traditional legend. So they have a kin sense that lets them tell if somebody is kin to one of the... They are a troop, and if you're kin to any of the members, they know. And they can focus by seeking to figure out, basically, whether they're related to a creature and how. And they've got all sorts of troop and undead and incorporeal abilities that you might expect for them to have. They're pretty powerful. They've got a frightful presence, a blazing admonition where they scorch those who lay eyes on them, dealing massive amounts of fire damage. Prone creatures that are supplicating and their own kin are unaffected, as long as they have not taken a hostile action against the Night Marchers. And at least they have to wait a few rounds to do it again, but it's a lot of damage. And they can shoot a volley of missiles. It's a hail of spears and stones. It's a wide, like a 10-foot burst. It gets smaller if you've destroyed a lot of them, like a lot of troops. They've got striking koa, where they will hit you with spears, clubs, and leo mano in melee. That's kind of a typical troop attack and troop movement that everybody's got if they're a troop. So that's Night Marchers. Next up is Nymphs. So, we've already got the Naiads and the Dryads in Bestiary 1. But Bestiary 1 talks about some other types of nymphs, such as Lampads, and a new one that was introduced in a sidebar in Bestiary 1, Hesperid. So, of course, I had to write some more for Bestiary 3. So, we've got, they're Fey Guardians of Nature, and they represent, like, a particular area that they're dependent upon, but that is sort of like their ward. And Lampads and Hesperids are, Lampads are nymphs of underground, Hesperids are the nymphs of sunsets and areas with sunsets. And there's also queens for each of those types, which were introduced, the rules for queens in Bestiary 1 and reproduced here in Bestiary 3. So Lampads are usually chaotic neutral. They protect underground places, and they have very strong emotions. They're often just sporadically weeping for catharsis, and they are kind of named Lampads because they have these little lights that they carry around. They are like traditionally, mythologically, from Greek mythology, the nymphs that were in the underworld, so that like went through the underworld of Hades and other underground areas and used the lamps to guide others. So Lampads are dependent upon their cavern area. They get sickened if they move too far away from it. They can attack you with their light wisp, which is like the little lamp that they have, or punch you with their earthen fist. They can shape stone, meld into stone. They've got a lot of earth-based abilities that you might expect because they're kind of cavern nymphs. They can weep once per round as a single action that can potentially cause you to be unable to use reactions and slowed as you too sob uncontrollably along with them and experience that cathartic release. And that's sort of Lampads. And Lampad queens are capricious monarchs and protectors of vast underground domains, regarded in ballads and tales as allies and foes, monsters and muses. And they really don't like those predominantly evil underground ancestries such as Drow and Duergar, but they are particularly fond of bats. Many have Nycteras, the bat sprites, as favored attendants. And so Lampad queens have a cavern empathy, where they can use diplomacy on cavernous creatures. They're tied to the land, which kind of all nymph queens are, tied to their cave system. Their nymph's beauty, all nymph queens have a different one, is that you become confused for a minute. Yeah, I'm skipping because I'm doing the Lampads together and then the Hesperids together. Even though Bestiaries say that they're going to be in the order from the lowest to the highest level. So They've got the Earthen Fist and their Light Wisp, like the regular Lampads. They've got powerful primal prepared spells like Earthquake, Summon Planet Fungus, Energy Aegis, all sorts of stuff. They can change shape like other Nymph Queens. They focus their beauty on you, in which case, not only are you confused, but also the conflicting emotions from the beauty aura intensify, so you no longer get a flat check to end the confusion when you take damage, which is pretty bad. And they can focus the emotions of the confusing creature towards a particular emotion to make them either sob uncontrollably, fawn over the Lampad Queen, or otherwise perform no actions beyond experiencing emotions. Yay. They've got inspiration, just like other Nymph Queens, gives bonuses to someone that they like, that they want to inspire. And their Despairing Weep is a more powerful weep that basically is crushing despair on all non-Lampads within 120 feet. And they tend to sort of be a mirror to the emotions and sort of intentions of those around them. So if you treat them with respect, they might protect and reward you, but those who wish to harm the Lampad Queen are met with swift wrath, and you might hear very different accounts of the exact same Lampad Queen from different people. Alright, back to Hesperids. Mm-hmm. So they are sunset nymphs. They guard colorful golden hues of the setting sun. They are based on, or I guess Hesperides is the plural, not Hesperids. We are using the, is that right? Yes, we're using the Greek appropriate plural. And the Hesperides you may have heard of from Greek mythology as the guardians of the golden apples. They worked with the dragon Ladon to guard the golden apples of the Hesperides. And so they've got that golden apple motif. I even brought in a Craig golden apple ability for them. They kind of didn't exist in Pathfinder until the sidebar where I think like Patrick added them in a sidebar when he was doing his development pass on Bestiary 1. And so, hey, we can do whatever we want with these. So they are more methodical and lawful. And they're guardians of things because the original myth they were guarding treasures as well. So they can create a golden apple to spin golden light around an object that kind of condenses this object into a golden apple, but it's really an object up to 20 cubic feet in volume, up to 80 bulk. And it reverts to its original shape after a full day away from the bonded location, or if the Hesperid spends a single action to end the effect. So they might have a bunch of golden apples that are actually like a variety of different treasures. They've got healing, searing light, a sunset ray ranged attack that does fire damage plus positive, and their sunset ribbon melee attack slashing plus a little fire at positive as well. They're dependent on sunset, which means they're bonded to a single remote location with a good view of the sunset. They, unlike some of the other nymphs where it's like after a certain amount of time, they take damage from being away from their area, Hesperids are based on a timing. They have to be sure to see the sky at sunset on a given day from that location, or they get drained in that regard. And that's sort of their deal. And they protect areas of natural beauty, but also items, treasure items. That's sort of part of what makes them different. And then Hesperid Queens, which are level 19. Basically, they're the most badass nymphs that we've seen so far, even compared to Hamadryads and Lampad Queens. Hesperid Queens rule over isolated regions soaked in the light of sunset. They guard countless treasures and secrets. And they're relatively likely to have powerful objects such as ancient relics or artifacts, but are also aware of the danger that just giving that out to you can have. They're also known for their affinity for gold dragons, sometimes working together to guard treasures, where the queen might guard such valuables as part of their ward, and the dragon sees the valuables as their hoard. And despite these competing viewpoints, they still get along and have alliances the last millennia. It's sort of a nod to the dragon Ladon working together with the Hesperides to guard the golden apples in Greek mythology. Well, here we go. Dragons can work together with Hesperides. And Hesperid Queen, just like all nymph queens tied to the land, they're tied to an isolated region such as an island or island chain, a remote coast or a secluded valley. Their nymph's beauty makes you transfixed in awe, causing you to be stunned for a round, and when they focus it, you basically become overwhelmed with visions of bliss and beauty, which causes you to depart from the domain as quickly and efficiently as you can for an hour, after which you forget ever reaching the domain, how you reached the domain, and everything that happened while you were within the domain. They can inspire people if they want. They've got ridiculously good primal spells, including Primal Phenomena, aka the Wish of Primal spells. Their Sunset Ray and Sunset Ribbons are super strong. And yeah, they're like, don't mess with the Hesperid Queen and their sort of area that they're protecting. Plus, also, as you can see here, nymphs can be of either gender, even though they are usually female, and they name these special types of nymphs queens, whether they're male or female. And so some of the art here has shown that they often have androgynous features, regardless of their gender, and this art is also really gorgeous as well. So that is through N. Shall we stop here,
Yes,
Linda?
I think this is a good
break
point for
our
episode.
show. So let's also give some XP, and then we can say goodbye to YouTube.
Sounds good.
All right. Bye, YouTube. See you next time.
Bye.